I used to think that I was a young journalist because I'm all of 29, but when I meet the headliners lot and see how kind of motivated, ballsy and brilliant they are, I find that extremely inspiring. It means that I'm quite confident that the future of journalism is in safe hands, and we all know how important it is that young people get involved in getting their message across to us boring old fuddy-duddies of 29 like me.
Why do you think that it's important that young people's views are represented in the media?
Well, I think there's several reasons for that, Jon. Firstly, I think that we tend, maybe for understandable reasons, just to get a fairly one-dimensional view of young people in the media, whilst there's always a difference between the generations in terms of experiences. I mean, my experience as a young person will be very different from yours, but I think because of the pace of technological and kind of world change, it's very, very different for this generation of young people than it was, say, for me and for adults.
I got involved with Children's Express when I was 14. The first story I did was interviewing the British National Party, and I asked if he was prepared to separate families, and he wouldn't answer my question. I was quite an insecure sort of person at the time, and was going through typical teenage problems, and just helped me grow as a person. And I'm quite thankful to Children's Express. I know it sounds cheesy, but I'm quite thankful to Children's Express.
I think the danger is that the media becomes a vehicle for middle-aged people, old people, rich people, white people, middle-class people, and there's a great danger that it falls into the hands of a narrow band of people. And it's important that children's voices are heard alongside all those other sectors in society, and it seems to me Headliners is doing a great job in doing that.
There's a real spin in the media against young people a lot of the time, and I think if we don't actually have outlets like Headliners and Children's Express, then we're not going to get the views of a really large chunk of society actually being heard. It's really important to get that balance.
Okay, well, my first encounter with Children's Express was nearly 2 years ago now, when I was being interviewed for the post of Children's Commissioner. And I thought, in retrospect, having been appointed and gone through the process, the way they went about it was absolutely superb. And I was so impressed by the approach that I commissioned Children's Express to work with us in recruiting every single member of staff I've appointed since then to the Children's Commission.
Some of the biggest issues. We're not talking about them, then it's no wonder young people get switched off politics. Over 50% of all muggings that took place in England and Wales last year were on people 22 and under. An amazing 30% were on 11 to 16-year-olds. That's a massive story, but it got very little coverage on the TV media.
During my time with Children's Express, I got to interview ministers, lords, MPs, politicians, doctors and campaigners. The list is endless. But most importantly, I got to interview other children and young people and to ask them their opinions and views on the most important things that are affecting them.
Every generation has the right to be heard, and just because you're young doesn't mean your views aren't valid. Just because you're 13 or 14 shouldn't mean you can't go and interview the Prime Minister if you've got a point to make to the Prime Minister or your local MP. And I think the brilliant thing about Headliners is it teaches young people how to access these people and how to get their points across and how to get their voice heard. And the difference with Headliners is that you're getting the views of young people, and even though it wasn't that long ago that I was young, I'm sure my experience of being 15 is completely different to today's 15-year-old, and I think we should all remember that however old we get.